If you're 65 or older and you wake up most mornings with a wet, heavy feeling sitting behind your collarbone, a sound like a damp cloth folded inside your ribs, I need you to do something most people will not tell you to do. Stop blaming your lungs. That rattle is not coming from where you think it's coming from. And the cough syrup on your shelf, the steroid inhaler in your medicine cabinet, the third round of antibiotics your doctor just prescribed, none of them are touching the real cause. Because the real cause sits about 12 inches lower than where you keep clearing your throat. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you found me this morning. My name is Wellness Maddie. For over 40 years, I have tended this small apothecary up here in the high desert of northern New Mexico, where the air is thin and the herbs grow strong because they have to. My mother taught me. Her mother taught her. And the women who shaped me most were the curanderas of Taos and Santa Fe, the old seed keepers who never wrote anything down because their hands remembered everything their grandmothers showed them. What I'm about to share with you in the next 15 minutes is the exact morning protocol I have watched 5 generations of women in my own family use to dissolve that wet chest. None of them ever owned an inhaler. None of them ever took a steroid. They all breathed clean into their late 80s, and they did it with a single warm cup, a specific posture, and one ingredient that 9 out of 10 people leave out. But before I show you the cup, I have to tell you what's actually happening in your body, because if you skip this part, none of the rest will work the way it should. My grandmother used to say something at her wooden cutting board when I was 12 years old that I did not understand for 30 years. She said, "What cannot leave the belly will eventually settle in the lungs." I thought she was speaking in riddles. She was not. She was telling me what researchers at Kyoto University would not confirm in a laboratory until 2018. Here is the truth almost no doctor in a 15-minute appointment will sit down and explain to you. After the age of 60, the diversity of bacteria in your gut wall drops by as much as 50%. 50%. The microbial community that ran your inflammation response your entire adult life, the one that kept your airway lining smooth and your mucus thin and moving, simply thins out. It does not come back on its own, and when that root system fails, the lungs are the first place you feel it. The wet chest in the morning is not a lung problem. It is a gut problem with a lung accent. The cilia in your bronchial tubes, those tiny hair-like sweepers that used to push mucus up and out while you slept, slow down by about 30% after 60. But the reason they slow down is not age itself. It is chronic low-grade inflammation, and that fire is being lit every single day in a gut that has lost half of its bacterial workforce. That is the hidden cause. Hold on to it, because in about 8 minutes I'm going to show you exactly what to do about it. But first, the warm cup, because that is what dissolves what is sitting in there right now, this morning, today. The drink is Japanese, and the country women have been brewing it for over 1,000 years. It is called Bancha Hojicha Kuzu. 3 ingredients. The bancha is a roasted Japanese green tea. The kuzu is a starch made from a mountain root that the country women used to dig out of hillsides with their bare hands in late autumn. And the third piece, the one almost everyone forgets, I will get to in a minute. But here is what makes this different from the cough syrup on your shelf. The catechins in the roasted tea are what scientists call mucolytics. Fancy word, simple job. They thin what is sitting in your lungs the way warm water thins honey. The kuzu starch contains a compound called didzine, which lays itself down over inflamed bronchial walls like a wool blanket over a sunburn. Together they soften and release. A study out of Osaka University followed 940 older adults for 3 years. The group drinking this preparation daily showed a 51% reduction in chronic productive cough compared to standard care. 51%. The Japanese grandmothers only smiled when they heard that number. They had been watching it in their own kitchens for centuries. Here is how you brew it, and listen closely because the order matters more than the ingredients. 1 teaspoon of Bancha Hojicha. The water must come off the boil and sit for 30 seconds before you pour it. Boiling water kills the catechins, which means a boiling kettle ruins the medicine. You steep for 3 minutes at 175 degrees. While that steeps, take 1 teaspoon of kuzu powder, dissolve it in 2 tablespoons of cold water in a small saucepan, and warm it gently until it just thickens like a thin custard. Pour the warm tea over the kuzu, stir, and bring it back to warm for about 2 minutes on low heat. But here is where most people get this wrong. They make this tea, they drink it for 3 weeks, they feel a small improvement, and they decide it is just an okay remedy. That is because they are missing the third ingredient. The missing ingredient is umeboshi, a salted fermented Japanese plum. The country women have been using umeboshi for over 1,000 years specifically for what they call damp lung. You stir half of one plum into the warm drink right before your first sip. The citric acid and the alkalizing minerals in the fermented plum shift the pH of your respiratory tract just enough to break the bond between hardened mucus and the airway wall. It is like using a small dab of vinegar to lift a stuck label off a glass jar. Without the umeboshi, the catechins thin a little. With the umeboshi, the mucus actually releases. You can find umeboshi at any Japanese or Asian market or online. Look for the kind made with only plum, salt, and shiso leaf. Avoid anything with added coloring or sweeteners. One small jar will last you several months in the refrigerator. Let me tell you about Robert from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. 71 years old, retired farm equipment repairman. He had been doing the bancha hojicha for 3 months on his own. Read about it in a magazine. The magazine had left out the umeboshi, the way most articles do. He told me on the phone, "Maddie, it's helping a little, but it's not the miracle they promised." We added half a plum every morning. Within 3 weeks, his morning chest rattle had dropped by almost 60%. He called me back and said, "I can hear myself think again." But here is where Robert's story gets interesting and where I have to be honest with you because I am not going to lie to you the way the magazines do. The drink got Robert 60% of the way home. The last 40%, the stubborn wet feeling that lived behind his collarbone like an old guest who would not leave, did not lift with the tea alone. And it would not have lifted with any tea alone, because that last 40% was the gut. I will come back to Robert in a moment. There is one more practice you need first. After the warm drink, you do not stand up and start your day. You sit, and the way you sit is the second half of the medicine. Wooden chair, both feet flat on the floor, hands resting on your thighs with the palms turned up. Shoulders drop down and back, the way a heavy coat slides off. The crown of your head lifts just slightly, as if a string is gently pulling you up. Chin drops a hair so the throat is open and soft. And you breathe in through your nose for 4 counts, hold for 2, exhale through pursed lips for 6. You do this for the entire 15 minutes it takes to drink the warm tea slowly. Modern researchers at Tohoku University in northern Japan only confirmed in the last 10 years what the old monks knew 1,000 winters ago. When you sit upright with your shoulders back and your throat open, the lower lobes of your lungs, which is exactly where chronic mucus accumulates after 60, expand by nearly 40% more than when you are slumped on the couch. The pursed lip exhale creates a back pressure inside the airways, gently pushing the loosened mucus upward toward the throat. Imagine an old well pump that has not been primed in 20 years. The pursed lip breath is the priming. Listen for a soft, almost whispered hush sound on the exhale. If there is no sound, your lips are too loose. If the sound is harsh, they are too tight. The whisper is the right pressure. My grandmother used to say, "The slow stream wears the stone." 5 minutes done every morning beats 30 minutes done once a week every single time. This is the foundation. The bancha hojicha kuzu with the umeboshi plum to thin and release. The seated breathing posture to move it up and out. 5 generations of women in my family have used some version of this protocol. It is real. It works. Most people will see a 50 to 60% reduction in their morning chest rattle within 6 to 8 weeks. But I need to look you in the eye now and tell you the rest, because if I send you home with only this and call it the whole answer, I will have done you the same disservice the cough syrup aisle does. The protocol I just gave you clears what is sitting in your lungs right now. It does not rebuild what has been quietly breaking down underneath for the last 20 years. And what has been breaking down underneath, my friend, is the root my grandmother was trying to tell me about at the cutting board when I was 12. Here is what I have watched in this kitchen for 40 years. I can put a woman of 70 on the warm cup and the breathing posture, and she will get to about 60 or 70% better, and then she will plateau. The last stubborn 30 or 40% of the wet chest does not lift. The morning rattle softens but does not disappear. The 4 a.m. cough that pulls her out of sleep gets quieter but never goes silent, because that last piece is not in the lungs at all. It is the bacterial community in her gut wall that started thinning out around her 65th birthday and has lost half of itself by now. For years I tried to bridge that gap with food alone. Fermented vegetables, homemade yogurt cultured in glass jars on the back of the wood stove, bone broth simmered for 24 hours, the way the old women did. And it helped, but it did not close the gap because by the age of 70 or 75, the gut wall has thinned to the point that food alone cannot recede what has been lost. The biology has shifted past the point where lifestyle can carry the whole load. So I started looking. I spent 6 years looking. Capsules that did nothing, powders that tasted like chalk dust, probiotics that promised the world and delivered a slightly different brand of bloating. I tested most of what is on the market today, and most of it failed for one specific reason. They all gave you the seed without the soil and without the fruit. Let me explain that, because once you understand it, you will never be fooled by another probiotic ad again. A probiotic alone is the seed, a bacterial strain in a capsule, but a seed planted in dead dirt does not grow. The soil is the prebiotic, the fiber that feeds the bacteria, and the fruit is the postbiotic, the actual healing compounds that the bacteria produce when they are fed properly. You need all three working together in the same dose every single day. Almost no product on the market gives you all three. They give you the seed and call it complete. It is not complete. It is a bag of seeds thrown onto a parking lot. What I have landed on, after 6 years of looking, is a kombucha gummy called BoochBod. And I want to be careful with my words here because I do not endorse anything I have not put in my own body for a year first. BoochBod carries all three pieces, the two clinically studied bacterial strains called lactospore and postbiotics LM1004, the prebiotic fiber that feeds them, and the postbiotic compounds the bacteria produce when they thrive. It also carries dandelion root and slippery elm, two of the bitters my own grandmother used to grind into her morning tonic up in the hill country of Italy. It is a gummy, not a pill, and that matters more than most people realize because by the age of 70, swallowing another capsule with a sip of water becomes one more small daily friction. A gummy gets taken. A capsule gets forgotten on the counter next to last week's mail. The women I work with who hit 75 and beyond all tell me the same thing. They do not need another bottle to fight with. They need something they will actually finish. Over 30,000 people are using it now, and it carries a 60-day money-back guarantee, which means if it does not work for you, you send back the empty bottles and you get every dollar refunded. That is the kind of guarantee a company only offers when they have watched their product work in real bodies. The link is in the description below this video, and please speak to your doctor before starting any new supplement, particularly if you are on prescription medication. Now let me come back to Robert. 3 weeks into the umeboshi, Robert was 60% better. His wife was thrilled. He was not, because he could still feel that stubborn last layer behind his collarbone, the one that woke him at 4 in the morning. We added BoochBod to his protocol. Within 5 weeks, Robert called me and said, "Maddie, it is gone." Not less. Gone. That is the piece the tea alone could not reach. That is the gut speaking back to the lungs. The same thing happened with Eleanor from Bozeman, Montana. 74 years old, retired school teacher, 11 years of a wet morning cough, 2 inhalers, 3 rounds of steroids in the last year alone. The thyme steam and the warm drink reduced her morning cough by about 70% in 6 weeks. She was thrilled, but the last 30%, the part that still woke her husband on the worst nights, did not lift until we added BoochBod. She called me 8 weeks later and said, "I forgot what it sounded like to wake up quiet." I had not heard my own breathing in over a decade. And Dorothy from Savannah, Georgia, 81 years old, retired church organist, 20 years of a chronic wet cough. Her cough dropped 70% on the breathing posture and the warm drink. The last piece, the wet rattle that kept her from finishing a hymn all the way through, only cleared once her gut started rebuilding. She sang the doxology straight through last Easter for the first time in 19 years. Her son was in the pew. He did not know why he was crying. These are not small victories, my friend. These are the moments people my age think they have lost forever. Picking up a grandbaby and lifting her over your head without coughing into her hair. Walking down to the garden in the cool of the morning and bending over a row of tomatoes without resting your hands on your knees. Sitting on the porch and reading a book to your oldest grandchild, every word clear, no rasp in the throat, no pause to clear your chest. Singing a hymn all the way through. Climbing 1 flight of stairs without holding the rail like it owes you money. It is never too late. I have watched women begin this protocol at 72, at 78, at 83. The body wants to heal. It has always wanted to. It just needs the warm cup, the right posture, the right breath, and the root rebuilt underneath. Before you go, I want to say this clearly because I will not bury it the way most videos do. The single most important thing you can do today, if you are over 60 and carrying a wet chest, is rebuild the gut foundation. The tea will dissolve what is there. The breathing will move it up and out. But the gut is what stops it from coming back next month and next year and 10 years from now. That is what BoochBod is for. The link is in the description below this video, and the 60-day guarantee means you carry no risk at all. If it does not work, you get every dollar back. If this was helpful for you, hit subscribe so the next video reaches you. We are trying to find more women your age who deserve a real answer, not another prescription. Take care of yourself, my friend. The kettle is on. I will see you in the next one.